Good afternoon, everyone. What's going on, guys? It's Thursday. I think we consider that Friday Eve. Week's almost over. I know it's been relatively a brutal week so far. So hopefully you guys have been able to kind of conserve your capital. I mean, the fact that it's been when you see the markets like in such wild swings like this, I think hopefully the bigger picture that you kind of understand is that you should preserve your capital for later times, for later days in I want to say the month, the weeks rather. And this was, it honestly felt like one of those kind of weeks here, relatively, because of the fact that we had such wild swings to the upside, now back to the downside. There's times where we felt like we've been in chop. It's been just absolutely a roller coaster. El Lobo, buenas tardes, señor. Today was a shit show. I'm not gonna lie. That's why I was literally just saying, like, when you see days like a shit show like today, you see days where you have these wild swings that take place, especially from the overnight movement. This is when you preserve your capital. You wait for better times ahead. Wait for better days. Wait for those days where you particularly have beautiful trends that you can trade off of. This week has been absolutely disgusting for that type of action to take place. All right. Annette, how are you? So, bigger picture though, it does look like we're kind of at a critical juncture. And why do I say that? It's not necessarily just looking particularly at SPY. But what I actually do have my attention more towards is the VIX right now. The VIX is sitting right near this $30 flat mark, which I believe if we end up seeing the VIX do break down below $30, it's going to get interesting. I think bulls are going to start to come back alive. So it's a critical juncture. I am, however, still leaning a little bit more towards the bearish case. I think that we finish out the week on a down note. And then next week, we'll see the market kind of get a little bit of a revive ahead of what's going to be an onslaught of most of those tech names to be reporting earnings. All right. These Fed morons just can't shut up. That is absolutely true, Lobo. It's been a hell of a damn onslaught with all these different news catalysts going on. We had, I think, one night there was China that affected us. I believe that was actually the night before Tesla, if I'm not mistaken, that we had the whole China thing that ended up making the entire market go from overnight. SPY went up from $2 to down flat to red. Just disgusting price action. James, what was the news that caused the huge drop today? There wasn't necessarily news that dropped us today. That was just particularly the fact of technicals. We had no business necessarily making the movement that we had today. But if you also notice, I think I dropped one chart into the swing channel here today in the Discord, but also looking at SPY, and if I'll probably outline it so you get a better image saying that it was primarily technicals. I'm just gonna outline something really quickly. So the first thing to pretty much identify was that you have a little bit of a tilted head and shoulders action going on with SPY. And that was pretty much also the same thing that I saw going on with Microsoft as well. That's why I took a little bit of some lottos going into tomorrow. Nothing that I'm gonna lose sleep over tonight at all by any means. But it's just that the risk reward, it could obviously go against me. But the fact that the risk reward seems a little bit favorable for the overall trend that we've been sitting in this market, I'm looking to the fact that we had a nice little head and shoulders action. That's why you saw that little sporadic spike that we had given this morning. And we had that nice little push attempting to break north over that 372.68 mark, which I was literally calling for that resistance rather all morning. I came on live, I dropped the levels that I was pretty much watching. I believe I dropped the same level in Discord as well. And that was exactly the same level that we ended up having as a reversal for that afternoon. So it wasn't necessarily news that caused that reversal, that steep reversal. It was more so the technicals that ended up causing that. So we basically got a reversal causing that little tweezer top action there off of this hourly. We ended up having a nice little right shoulder that caused such a drastic drop off because it wasn't necessarily that we just went, I want to say, green to red, perhaps. It was the fact that we saw it just a persistent selling type of action once we ended up getting such a rash reversal. So that's basically all it was to me, in my opinion. We ended up seeing a little bit of a rebound towards the end of the day, hence the fact that you saw a lot of names kind of reversing off of their lows towards the end of the afternoon, and that's basically what it was. So we're kind of just chilling right around my next support level below. 365.34 is what I actually have. We basically closed just a few cents above that. So that's going to be where I'm going to see now, okay, do we end up getting a price action yet again? Do we make a move tomorrow above 367.34? We make another attempt to push up towards that 372.68 resistance that caused the reversal today? Or do we end up filling that gap to the downside, which in my opinion is much more scarier right now? So that's why I fear that the downside is much more at a greater risk going into tomorrow than there is for the upside type of action that the market led us to believe into the close here. All right. James, I missed the pattern. I had a 368 put 1021. I should have held, but profit is profit. I can't blame you for if you took profits. I am definitely not going to discount you for taking your profits because again, VIX is in a critical spot right now. So we could definitely do a 360. We could see continuation off of that end of day reversal. And we could absolutely push towards that 372 spot again on SPY that we had that intraday reversal. So I'm not going to say that absolutely we can't. There's no definitive answer just yet. The VIX being at a critical spot, you see a hourly head and shoulders, and you see a gap fill below. It just felt like it kind of favored the downside, but that's not necessarily to say that if the VIX ends up crushing under $30 here going into tomorrow, I do think that that's going to give the market a breather and we could see a potential beautiful trend day for a Friday tomorrow. All right. But just the fact that we had the head and shoulders, I saw the greater risk to the downside. That was the only reason I ended up taking a lotto on Microsoft that I announced. It was like a $75 lotto from Microsoft puts going into tomorrow. And that was primarily because of the gap fill that I thought was going to be a greater risk. As you see, the gap fill is on SPY to the downside. All right. Because if we end up breaking down overnight, I could potentially see if the VIX continues to hold $30, we see that head and shoulders pretty much stay intact going overnight. I could potentially see the factor where we see the market gap down overnight, and that'll likely put us right into a support here that I have 360.87 and completing the gap fill. In which case, we'll see how soon we get there, but that could trigger the next reversal to the upside. All right. So that's looking at SPY right now. I mean, bigger picture again. Let's see if we reclaim 367, and then 372 half is basically the level that's in play for tomorrow. If we do see further upside off of that intraday low that we had today. All right. But getting into a few other things, I mentioned about the VIX. You see it kind of just crushing a little bit below that $30 mark after hours. We'll see if that actually sticks going into tomorrow. But the bigger thing that you want to identify is that we are in a relatively a falling wedge action. So it's going to be interesting to see once we get down to the low, this falling wedge as well, how this ends up particularly acting down to that 29 half. How is that going to potentially act? But I believe that if we end up trading down to the 29 half, it's going to be a full-on breakdown, and that'll likely put us right down towards that 20. I have support right around 29.26 is what I have on the VIX. So we break down below 30 here. That's where I'm saying it should trigger a nice little rally for the market, and that's what I'll be watching tomorrow if in fact we don't get a gap down. All right. So that's one thing. We already saw the dollar. The dollar's pretty much been just spiking nonstop. It's literally looked like it was head and shouldering going into today. You see the left shoulder, you see the head, and you saw the right shoulder potentially looking like it was going to break down going into today. But that was not necessarily the fact. We had a strong reversal off of the dollar going into today. And so that's something that it's gonna pique my interest as well looking at tomorrow earlier in the morning. Let's see if we pop over 113 half on the dollar. And that's gonna be something that I'm gonna particularly watch to see how overall equities end up responding to that. Do we see the downside action that I'm looking for with the gap down on SPY to fill the gap below? And the dollar continuing to rise above 113 half, or do we see that resistance on 113 half of the dollar, and then that'll give us a little bit of a breather for equities as the dollar regresses from that resistance? All right, so that'll be something else I watch. We already saw the bond yields pretty much all relatively up, but they have been going up relatively non-stop. So that wasn't necessarily something that piqued my interest today. I had already saw it up very slightly. The 10-year up about 2.5%. I actually have the 10-year yield going up to about 4.5%. We'll see how soon we particularly end up getting there. That kind of also indicates as well that the bottom is not necessarily in for the broader market as well. So I do have further upside on the yields overall, the 10-year and the 2-year. That's something I'll continue to keep an eye on, continue to monitor. We could also point to the fact that we had that Tesla earnings yesterday. We ended up getting a little bit of a tweet from Elon Musk yesterday afternoon saying, I will not let you down, something along the lines. But we ended up getting the gap down on Tesla regardless. I think it opened up and down 13, $14. So that was something that I was watching. I was expecting that immediate reversal. just because of the fact that we saw how much the market was overall recovering and so sporadically, and then watching that potential head and shoulders play out. I actually went on live. I went in our chat. I said to watch that 215 mark. That was the level that I ended up getting in on puts for Tesla. As you see, a nice little megaphone as I try to expand a little bit so you get a better view. But I was watching that 215 mark. That was relatively where we had prior resistance to support dating back towards October 11th. As you see, we had a little bit of a chop zone between that 215 mark. So that's where I was expecting to see the relative resistance. We had the nice little tweezer top action that played out, and I did get into puts around that 215 mark. I did sell around just, I believe we were breaking under 209 when I sold my puts on Tesla, and I was thinking at the point, I'm like, did I sell early? Are we going to get the full breakdown to this that basically your opening low down towards 202, and then potentially see if we get a reversal of that key mental level of 200? But I ended up being happy with the profits I took, so I'm gonna continue to watch this one going to tomorrow. In terms of retracement, I'm gonna watch resistance at 210. 210 half to be more precise is where I'm gonna watch for tomorrow. Let's see how Tesla reacts at that 210 half spot. Once we get the If we break over 210 half, then I do believe that we can make another push above to break out above today's high over that 215, and this could potentially look to fill that entire gap up towards 220. Otherwise, if we end up seeing resistance at 210 half, I'm going to watch for the reversal right back to the downside. And then that's where the low of the day today is going to be in play. And that key $200 mark is going to be where everyone's eyes are going to be on tomorrow. All right. So I'll continue to watch that. I did also mention on live yesterday. I actually spoke about the fact that I've been pretty high on semis relatively. That was a very bright spot of today's real little rally that we had earlier on in the day. Nvidia up about $6 to $7 at one given point this morning. AMD started to give you a nice little rally up about $3.50 to $4 as well this morning. Obviously giving back a lot of those gains, but that's where I was looking for. The fact that they ended up holding green on the day despite the market little rollover. I'm going to continue to watch the semis. Let's see if they continue to show strength going into tomorrow as it did today. And that'll be something that I continue to watch. The only thing that actually concerns me more so about AMD is that my overall bottom for AMD is down at $52. That's my overall bottom where I particularly am interested in getting a long term position. That's the only thing that actually prevents me from wanting to enter for a longer term swing. But just looking at the 15-minute here, what I basically see is a nice little, I want to say a little leading diagonal, little rising wedge type of action here off of the 15-minute. You see that you're basically basing towards the bottom of this trend line support that I have. Right around this 57 low, 57 and a quarter mark should be relative support for AMD. So that's why if we end up seeing a little bit of a dip and reversal type of action on AMD tomorrow, that's what I'm going to look to see if we hold that 57 and a quarter. Otherwise, if we don't hold 57 and a quarter, that's when things should relatively get ugly. And then that strength that we saw out of the semis today will likely be wiped out. And that should take us right down to 56 half and even lower down towards 55 flat is what I'm going to be watching for. All right. Jason, what's going on, my guy? So that's something I'm going to watch to see how the semis respond. Beautiful relative strength today for what the broader market gave us. But I'm going to see if the semis can actually hold that relative strength going into tomorrow and see how that plays out. All right. Let's see what else. I did mention the Microsoft play. That was one that I actually do have the lottos on. A little bit of a head and shoulders action, kind of similar to how SPY looks. So let's see how Microsoft ends up playing out. I'm going to watch for the breakdown here below 237.75. I believe there's a pretty wide gap down towards 230 flat that we're watching. And that'll be where I think the lottos that I have are going to pay off. If we don't, and then actually also below that 230 half, my key level of support will be 227.10. Otherwise, flip side of this scenario here, if we get the break over 238, then we could potentially look to take out today's highs, in which that would invalidate the head and shoulders action that's looking present right now. All right, Jason, what do I think about XOM? Let's take a peep. I believe Energy actually had a pretty solid day for the most part, relatively holding particularly. So that was actually a bright sign. I saw a few names in actually the energy sector that had some inverted head and shoulders that were playing out. But looking at the 15-minute here, the bigger thing that I'm watching here is a nice little wedge action that took place. You had the beautiful breakout here as of yesterday. but now you actually see a little bit of a topping type of formation. So that would be my major concern is the little topping type of formation that's kind of going on here right now. So you could say a little bit of a head and shoulders type of action as well. As I kind of dial in here to the corner, you have the left shoulder, you have a head, and potentially a right shoulder in the making. So that's the only thing that does concern me about this. But price action wise, I would be watching for the break over 104 half. You get a break over 104 half, you can potentially look to put in a new high off of today. And then below, what I'm going to be watching is below 103.54. That's when you're going to see the steeper reversal. And then downside would be as far as retesting what was prior resistance. You can come down as low as 101. So downside is a little bit risky here off of XOM if this does fail to get a breakout, because then you're going to be looking at about a near $3 move to the downside. So that would be my caution. But if you get that move over that 104 half and you take out 105, I believe that you're likely looking at this towards pushing towards 107 is what I'd be looking at. All right. Let's see what else. Lobo Snap. Snap had earnings today, didn't they? Yes, they did. Damn, that is disgusting. Why is that thing down? I wonder, is there a headline? Let me see what the headline actually says. All right, so not really a headline just yet. Actually, I could take a look at somewhere else. Hold up. Let me see. What did they say about Snap? How bad was it? See the headline. Let's see the headline. Where's the headline? Come on. When in doubt, look at Twitter. All right, so Snap not providing formal financial guidance. Okay, I can understand exactly why it dropped now. Their third quarter revenue was 1.13 billion. Their estimated was 1.14 billion, so came in just shy of their revenue. EPS was at a loss. They do have a stock buyback. I don't think that's really doing much. All right, so I think it's more so the guidance that kind of gave that impact. That's really what it seems like is that the guidance, because they didn't give any further guidance, and the fact that they ended up coming in short of their revenue, I think that's what the market particularly did not like. If I actually dial out, let's see if we can go out to, I think probably the monthly gives you a better image. Damn, that thing has a long way down. Key level support that I'll be watching here is actually the 666 level. 666 will be where I say you look to probably nibble at some shares on this. But that's exactly the level where I actually have this coming down. So it should potentially come down about another $2 from this $8 mark that it's sitting at. And that is something I want no part in. There's no reason that I want to end up getting it to Snap. But if I were to tell you to get into Snap, it will be right around that 666 mark. So $6.66 is what I would say you look to get into that. All right. A Lobo AEHR, Electronic Technology. Pretty nice chart. Let's see if we dial down. Let's see the 5-day chart. That inverted head and shoulders is still intact, still beautiful. Unfortunate that you ended up getting such a nice little wick to the upside and then just literally faded that entire move to the upside. That's kind of disappointing, I will say. But let's see if we get down towards the daily. Let's see where we need to recover to potentially get that larger degree move that you're looking for. All right, so in terms of resistance here, I will be watching would be right around 19.89 is what I'm looking at for resistance. So above 1989, that's what you want to reclaim, and then you could potentially take out that high of the day that you had today. So 1989, that's that key level that you're watching. Above 1989, that puts you up towards $21 flat, and above 21 flat, then you'd be looking at right around 22.78 is what I'm watching as your next key resistance. Otherwise, if you can't even reclaim above that 1989 mark, then I do believe that you're kind of going to be at risk here, and that's going to take you down below 17 half, and that's going to be pretty disgusting towards that gap fill to the downside. All right, but let's see how it goes tomorrow. If the market's likely going to end up rolling over tomorrow, it's more than compelling that you're going to end up looking towards that gap fill, which is the more concerning part if you're in a position still on that. But if we see the market give us a nice little reversal, a nice continuation more so off of the lows today to the upside, then I would favor the fact that you're going to break back over today's highs and you could potentially see this trade up towards that $21 mark rather easily tomorrow. So that would be what I would say. But right now it's looking a little bit iffy depending on the broader markets and that gap fill below. If it was me right now, I would preferably rather just stay on the sideline, wait to pretty much get back in below $17, roughly around 16.5 on that gap fill, and then I think that's your better risk reward in terms of your entry point. But if you're holding right now, I would likely assume that you're holding long dated expiration on it, in which case I don't think you're necessarily bothered by about $1 to move on this. You have November 25 calls. Ugh, I would have hoped that you would have taken profits today. That would have been the most ideal situation to have taken profits. Unfortunately, it is what it is. But I would say if you end up breaking down below $18 flat here, if you break below 18, I would presumably just say to cut the loss, honestly, and wait to get in around that 17 or under $17 mark on the gap fill, because then I would hate for you to get stuck having to hold from $18 all the way down towards that 17 mark, in which case you're gonna end up likely losing premium off of that. So either cut it as soon as you can and then wait for the gap fill to take place, or you end up holding it knowing that you have, I'm assuming, like the end of November type of expiration, in which case you can get a recovery off of that. All right. Other than that, I think I covered most of the key names that kind of took my attention: the Microsoft, the semis, looking at the dollar, the yields. So let's see again how the market does tomorrow. The VIX has my attention right now. And so I'm gonna watch to see that $30 mark. How does this gonna play out tomorrow? We've already had so much of just chop, so much of wild swings overnight. It's gonna be interesting to see what kind of wild swing we have again going into tomorrow. So I'm looking forward to it. It should be a fun Friday for 0 days tomorrow. But other than that, I think I will conclude today's segment there. Not much else to pretty much discuss. Key level again. Let's see how the VIX holds that $30 mark. If we hold 30, then it looks like it's going to be another put day, another bloody day. If we can potentially break down below $30, we may have a nice little trend day on our hands. In which case, we'll be on live to pretty much call it out and see what names that we particularly like. All right. But other than that, you guys all have a great afternoon. I will see you guys online.